The rope around your wrist is silk. They think that makes it better, but the knots are just as tight, and your name is just as gone. You stand barefoot on a crate, turned sideways, the rough wood biting into your heels. Dust clings to your hem, your lips, your future, and every man in this sun-scorched town is staring at you like your meat hanging in a butcher's window. Unmarried, 17, sound mind, skilled with a needle, comes with dowry rights to 5 acres and a milk cow, the auctioneer bellows. His breath smells like whiskey and cheap lard. No one here knows your middle name, not even your father, anymore. He's sitting 5 paces away, face like a church door locked in winter. He won't meet your eyes. Because this is how he pays his debt, not with cattle, not with land, with you. You keep your shoulders square, you keep your mouth shut, you keep your eyes steady, because that's what Ma said before her cough turned to blood last spring. Even when you lose everything, child, don't lose how you carry yourself. A man steps forward, boots polished, shirt too clean for a rancher. He doesn't look at you, not once. $85, he says. No one bids higher, not even a question. Just a nod from the auctioneer. And you're sold for less than the mule tied outside the saloon. They unrope your wrists, but the silk burns like shame. You don't cry, not in front of them, not even when your father walks away without a word. The man, your new husband, your buyer, your whatever he is, leads you to a wagon, doesn't speak until you're seated beside a sack of oats. You sew? He asks flatly. You nod. Good. My sister left fabric behind. I expect a bed quilt by harvest. He doesn't ask your name. You don't offer it. Because here's the thing he doesn't know. You already finished a quilt, the night before the auction, every square stitched with memory, and one square stitched with a name no one else knows. A name your mother whispered on her dying breath, the only man she ever loved, the man who wasn't your father. You stitched it into the corner, small, perfect, invisible to most. But if anyone ever looks close enough, they'll know exactly who you are and who you came from. As the wagon lurches forward, you keep your hands folded in your lap, but inside, you're not stitched shut. Your thread waiting to be pulled, and you know what happens when the right thread gets pulled. The whole story unravels. The house smells of sour milk and old timber, no lace, no curtains, just walls that listen too close. He doesn't carry your trunk inside, just drops it by the door with a grunt. You sleep in the sewing room, he mutters. There's a cot. Don't touch the rest of the house. You nod and say nothing, not because you're meek, but because your mother taught you. Quiet carries farther than shouting in a place like this. The sewing room is a lean-to nailed against the east side of the main cabin. Draft slips in under the door, over the sill, through the boards. But it's yours now, a crooked table, one iron needle, and your quilt tucked at the bottom of your bundle like a secret letter. You lay it across the cot before anything else. Each square tells a story you haven't spoken aloud. The green gingham? From the apron your mother wore the last spring, she smiled. The brown flannel? The shirt your father burned when he thought you'd outgrown questions. The blue calico square in the bottom right? That's the one no one's supposed to see. You stitched it from your mother's old church dress, and inside the hem, you embroidered it by candlelight. One name, in thread so fine it could vanish. Elijah M. Tully, not Hayes, not yours, not your father's, just the name your mother whispered when the fever came, when she cried through a memory that didn't belong to your family. You'd heard it once. Tell him the stitch held. He'll know. You never asked. Not directly. But every time your real father didn't come, every time your own father drank past sense, the silence said enough. It wasn't the name on your birth record, but it was the one that made you feel real. The next morning the man brings you scraps of muslin and an old treadle sewing machine that grinds like a mule when you push too hard. "Quilt by first frost," he says, then leaves. You wait until the door creaks shut, then you lay out the new scraps. And the old quilt beside them, side by side, one to sleep under, one to carry your truth. You know the rules. You know how names disappear out here, how women become hands and hands become ghosts. But a quilt? A quilt can outlive you. A quilt can hang on a line or fold in a cedar chest and carry the whole story if someone knows how to read the stitches. You sew until dusk, then light a stub of candle and stitch by its flicker. Your fingers cramp, but you don't stop, because if you die on this land, if you vanish like all the other girls before you, that name in the corner will stay, like a buried seed, waiting for spring. 3 days pass before he says another word to you. By then you've memorized the ranch's breathing, the way the wind moans through the rafters, the cough of the old mule, the distant hum of cattle that don't belong to him. The land doesn't lie, even when people do. It tells you this place used to matter, but now it's hollow. The man, his name is Everett Gable, though you only know it from a scrap of mail tossed on the porch, doesn't farm, doesn't ranch, doesn't speak of anything but fences and firewood and the quilt he expects to see stitched by frost. He doesn't beat you, doesn't touch you. But every silence feels like a door locked tight. On the 4th day, you carry your wash basin behind the cabin. You scrub with lye soap until your hands go raw, because it's easier than thinking. That's when you see her. A girl, maybe 17, maybe younger. Dark hair, eyes too old for her face. She's scrubbing linens on the other side of the clothesline. Fast, efficient, practiced. You both pretend not to notice each other at first. Then she says softly, "You the new one?" You nod. "They always come with quilts," she says, not unkindly. Don't know why. You glance sideways. "You work here?" She shrugs. "Work, live, survive. Name's Lyda. Mine's—" You stop. "The name you were born with feels brittle." She waits. "Mary Bell," you say. It's close enough to real. Lyda nods, satisfied. "Well, Maribel, you ain't the first." That night, she brings you a boiled potato and a piece of ham, not because he told her to, but because she knows what hunger looks like. "You sewin'?" You nod. "Almost finished." She watches you finger the edge of your old quilt, the one folded under the cot. "That yours?" You hesitate. Then you lift a corner, just enough for her to see the edge stitching. Her hand brushes the calico, and freezes. She doesn't say anything for a long moment. Then she whispers, "Where'd you get this?" "My mother," you answer. Lyda's face goes pale. "I've seen that name before," your breath catches. "Where?" "On a man's saddle blanket, 8, maybe 10 years back. Came through trading horses. Didn't talk much, but he stitched that same name, same thread color, same style." You stare at her. "Where is he now?" She swallows. "Don't know. He never came back." You trace the stitched name with your fingertip. The thread feels warmer now, like blood. Outside, the wind howls across the prairie, dragging dust like ghosts through the dry grass. And inside your ribs, something cracks open. Hope, or danger, maybe both. You rise before dawn, heart still pounding from the dream. In it, you were 6 again, kneeling on the cabin floor while your mother threaded a needle through blue calico. But this time, the thread bled red. And when you looked up, it wasn't her stitching anymore. It was a man's hand. And the name wasn't hidden. It was burning. You shake it off and pull on your shawl, still damp from yesterday's rain. Lida's not in the sewing room. She rarely is this early. But someone left a candle lit near the hearth. You wrap your old quilt around your shoulders for warmth. The muslin scraps for Everett's new quilt can wait. What can't wait is the sudden, bone-deep need to move. The barn is half collapsed, boards hanging like torn skin, but the far stall is dry and warm, and that's where you find him, Everett's gelding, snorting soft steam into the cool air. You feed him oats from a rusted pail, whisper nonsense just to hear your own voice. Then you climb into the loft. It's dust-choked and tight, but there's one narrow window where light spills through like honey. You spread the quilt on the hay and kneel beside it. You pull back the blue calico square. Your stitches are there, tight as ever. Elijah M. Tully. But today, for the first time, you notice something else. Tiny, pale threads along the edge. Not yours, a different hand. You blink hard. Your mother must have sewn it once before you, covered something else, or maybe it wasn't hers at all. You run your fingers along the seam until you find it, a weak stitch. You ease it open, careful not to tear the fabric. Inside is a second piece of cloth, faded but legible. You see the initials again, EMT, and something else, a date, May 9th, 1861. That's your birthday, not the year, the day. You press the cloth to your chest. Someone wanted this hidden. Someone else wanted it found. You don't hear Lida until her breath catches behind you. She's standing at the top of the ladder, face pale. Where'd you find that? You show her. She kneels beside you, hands trembling. I was wrong, she whispers. The man who had that name, he wasn't just passing through. What was he then? Her voice cracks. He owned this ranch, before Everett. Silence coils around your ribs like a rope. I thought Everett's father... No, this land used to belong to Elijah Tully, but he vanished during the war. Folks said he died. Everett's people filed claim on the property when no heirs came forward. Your breath stutters. If that name's in your quilt... Lida meets your eyes. You might be the heir. You clutch the cloth to your chest. Below, the gelding stamps nervously. From outside, you hear boots. Everett's voice. Closer. Too close. You tuck the cloth back inside the seam, refold the quilt, and shove it under the hay. Lida grabs your wrist. Don't trust anyone, she whispers. Not even me. Everett doesn't enter the barn that morning. He stops just short of the door, mutters something about fence repairs, and disappears toward the southern pasture. But the way his shadow paused in the threshold, you know he felt something, sensed it. He's not a man of questions, only orders. But even orders come slower now, as if he suspects you're remembering too much. You spend the day quilting in silence, your needle moving like a whisper. Lida doesn't speak either. She's quieter since the barn, watches you from doorways, listens when you don't speak. After supper, she brings you tea, strong and bitter, and says just 4 words. You still have it? You nod. Good. Hide it better. That night, sleep won't come. You pull the quilt over your legs, hand drifting to the calico square. The hidden scrap inside feels warm, like breath trapped in fabric. You trace the name again. Elijah M. Tully. It shouldn't exist here, Not on this land, not in this house. You rise, wrap yourself in your mother's old shawl, step outside barefoot into a night so quiet it feels like holding your breath. You walk east, past the well, past the weeping tree your mother once loved, to the fence line. There, hidden behind a row of dried corn stalks, lies a broken stone. You clear the dirt with your sleeve. The letters are faint. EMT, May 9th, 1861. The air leaves your lungs. Someone carved this, someone who knew. You kneel, run your fingers along the question mark. A birth, but no death. Not officially, not unless someone wanted him forgotten. Behind you a twig snaps. You whirl around. It's not Everett. It's a stranger, tall, lean, wrapped in a buffalo hide coat, a Lakota braid trailing over one shoulder. His eyes fix on the quilt in your arms, or maybe not the quilt, the thread. I know that name, he says in quiet, deliberate English. Your breath catches. Who are you? He steps into moonlight, doesn't reach for a weapon, doesn't flinch when your hand moves to the shawl's edge like a warning. My brother sewed that name, he says. I watched him stitch it the night before he vanished. You freeze. Your brother? His voice is low thunder. Elijah M. Tully, my mother's son. The quilt slips from your arms. He steps forward, bends, picks it up with reverence, runs his thumb across the square, the exact seam you opened, then looks up. You have his hands, he murmurs. You press the thread the same way. Your mouth goes dry. If that's true, you whisper, then what does that make me? His eyes soften, but he doesn't smile. I don't know, he says, but I've been looking for the answer for 12 winters. You stare at each other, strangers on opposite ends of a story only one of you remembers. Then he says, my name is Rein in Quiet. And for the first time since you were sold, your hands don't shake when you reach out, because you're not alone, not anymore. By dawn, Rainy and Quiet is gone. No footsteps in the dirt, no scent of horse, just the echo of his name still hanging in the air like smoke. You sit on the porch, quilt in your lap, staring at the horizon where he disappeared. Your fingers curl around the seam he touched, and the memory it unlocked. You were 9 the first time you saw your mother cry over fire, not from pain, from a letter. She'd taken it from her apron, unfolded it twice, then dropped it into the flame without reading a word aloud. But before it curled into ash, you saw 2 things, a looped E and the word mine. Afterward, she hugged you so tight you couldn't breathe. She never said whose letter it was. Now you know. That morning, you search the barn. There's a loose plank behind the feed bins. Warped and dark with age, you pry it open. Inside is a tin box, rusted at the edges, and inside that, 5 folded papers. The ink is smudged from years of breath and dust, but the first one begins with, "To the woman I should have married." You don't read more, not yet, because the door behind you creaks open, and Everett's voice cuts the silence like a blade. "What are you doing in here?" You turn slowly. His eyes aren't angry, they're afraid. You've never seen him afraid. "I was just feeding the horses," you lie, too quickly. He steps closer. "That's my barn." You fold the paper, tuck it into your dress pocket. "And I'm your property," you say softly. "Isn't that how it works?" He flinches. Then he grabs the tin box. "What's in here?" "Nothing, just scraps." He yanks it open. His eyes scan the letters. You watch his lips press tight. He moves toward the hearth. "No." But it's too late. He throws the whole box into the flames. The metal groans, paper shrivels. Your fingers twitch toward the fire, but it's over. Gone. Your mother's truth. Your real father's voice. All of it. Ash. Where'd you find them? He demands. You say nothing. Everett's breathing hard now, like a man who realizes he's been living on stolen time. That man, he hisses. The one you talked to last night. He comes back here. He dies. You meet his gaze. You burn a name, you whisper. But it still echoes. He slaps you, not hard, but enough to leave silence in its place. You don't cry, not in front of him. When he leaves, you kneel by the fire. The tin box is blackened, but something didn't burn. You reach in, hand shaking, one scrap, not a letter, just a piece of muslin fused to the side of the box. Your mother's handwriting, barely legible. He loved her more than land, more than safety, and that's what got him killed. Below it, in smaller print, if she bears his child, the ranch is hers. You stare at the line until the words sink deeper than blood. You were sold like an object, but you carry a name. And that name might mean this land was never Everett's at all. You press the muslin to your chest and swear you'll never let another secret burn. You spend the next day pretending to stitch Everett's quilt. But it's your old one that keeps pulling your thoughts, like the moon pulls the tide. Hidden now in the hayloft, tucked behind saddle blankets and a rotting crate of cornmeal, it breathes like something alive. That night you light no candle. You sew in the dark, and when the needle slips, pricks your finger, you don't curse. You just watch the blood rise. A drop lands on the muslin. You press your thumb over it, hard, sealing it into the fibers. Because this isn't just thread and cloth anymore. It's inheritance, and maybe justice. By morning, your fingers are blistered. Your eyes burn. But the new quilt, the one for Everett, is nearly done. Good enough, at least, to pass a glance. He walks in without knocking, boots heavy with wet clay. Took you long enough. You don't answer. He picks up the quilt, holds it up to the light. You study his face, searching for a flicker, a wince, a crack. He drops it back on the cot. You think this earns you something? No, you say. He leans closer. The smell of sweat and iron and tobacco clings to his breath. You're not special, girl. That quilt don't mean anything. You let the silence stretch long, then say softly, You looked scared when you burned those letters. His eyes flash. I should have burned you. You stand, slowly, controlled. You still can, you say, but you won't, because you don't know what else I have stitched. He moves before you finish the sentence, grabs the old quilt from behind the crate. You weren't careful enough, and rips it from its hiding place. You lunge, but he's already tearing seams, thread unspooling in angry spirals. You scream, once, raw and sharp, not for the fabric, but for the names unraveling. One square falls loose, the blue calico. It flutters to the dirt floor. And something small falls with it, a brass button, green with age, etched with initials, EMT. Everett kicks it aside. Worthless, he growls, then tosses the rest into the fire. You fall to your knees, watch, as the story you carried, every square, every secret, goes up in orange and ash. But he doesn't see the button. He doesn't see you pocket it, fingers trembling. He thinks he's won, but you know something he doesn't. He just destroyed the only thing connecting him to the land. And you? You still have the name, still have the thread, still have the button. That night under moonlight, you sew again, with a new needle, a new square, and you stitch a different name, Reign in Quiet. Because you don't just carry your mother's past anymore, you're carrying the future. The next 3 days are windless, the kind of still that makes even birds hush. You spend them sewing by lamplight, the button sewn into a secret pocket of your bodice. You press your palm against it when you walk past Everett, when you cook, when you listen to his boots scraping floorboards above your room. It's your anchor now. Reign in Quiet doesn't come back, but you feel him watching, somewhere beyond the tree line, like a ghost with breath. On the 4th morning, the sound returns, not wind, not hoofbeats. A hawk's cry, sharp and spiraling. You rise from your cot, step outside. Lida's already there, bucket in hand, frozen at the edge of the well. A rider crests the hill, alone. He doesn't gallop, doesn't rush, just moves with that slow, terrible calm of someone who's ridden longer than most people live. Reign in Quiet. This time, Everett sees him first. He bursts from the cabin, shotgun slung over one shoulder. "Trespassing," he calls, voice too high. Reign in Quiet stops 10 yards short, slides off his horse, no weapon drawn. "I've come to trade," he says. Everett scoffs. "You think I trade with savages?" "No," Reign says softly. "But you might trade with blood." He pulls something from his satchel, a strip of cloth, blue calico. Everett stiffens. "Where'd you get that?" Reign doesn't answer, just lifts his eyes, looks straight at you. "I came for the girl," he says. You don't speak, not yet, because this is where the past makes its demand. Everett steps forward, gun raised. "She's mine by contract." "Then let's see it," Reign says, calm as dusk. "Let's read the paper that says she's livestock." Everett's lips twitch. "She was payment. Her father owed." "You don't own what's not his," Reign replies. "And this land," he points to the ground, "this land belonged to my brother." "Your brother was a deserter," Everett snaps. "A half-breed coward who abandoned his claim." You step forward then, heart hammering. "And yet, here you are, living on his ranch, off his well, calling his ghost a lie." Reign turns to you, quiet, waiting. You nod once. "I have his name, you saw," you say. "Stitched and buried and burned, but not gone." Everett lifts the shotgun, and Lida moves faster than anyone expects. She slams the well bucket into his side. The shot goes wide, powder exploding in air. Reign surges forward, grabs the barrel, twists. Everett screams, "Psvoom!" Not from pain, but from panic. The gun hits the dirt. You move too. Your boots hit the ground running, straight to Reign. You don't look back, not even when Everett calls after you, not even when Lida shouts something, a blessing or a warning, you can't tell. Reign helps you mount, then swings up behind you. You don't ask where you're going, you just clutch the reins, the button pressed between your ribs and the wind, and ride toward the truth, toward the bloodline that never asked your permission, only your courage. You ride until the sky turns silver, not quite day, not quite night, the kind of hour where memory seeps into the wind and rides beside you. Reign in Quiet says nothing for miles, just guides the horse through the canyon paths like he's done it 100 times. Maybe he has. Finally he speaks. You stitch the name. You nod, clutching your shawl tighter. He glances sideways. You didn't know what it meant? I knew it wasn't my father's. He nods slowly. It was mine. You stop breathing. He doesn't mean that in the way you feared, but in the way that matters more. Elijah Tully, Reign says, My half-brother, same mother, different fathers. He grew up in both worlds. You wait. He fought with the Union, he continues. Disappeared before Appomattox. Never came home. You swallow. My mother, you whisper, said he wasn't a soldier. Said he was a carpenter. Rain smiles. Sad. He was both. Built cabins in the winter. Fought because he thought it would end the killing. You stare at your hands. What happened to him? Rain pulls the horse to a slow stop beneath a dead cottonwood. The branches stretch like bone fingers toward the sky. I never found out, only that he wrote to a woman, spoke of a child, said he was buying land. He looks at you, eyes deep as river ice. I searched every ranch with his handwriting, every county clerk. But no one would admit he existed, not white enough to inherit, not Indian enough to be remembered. You reach into your bodice, pull out the button, hold it out. This was on his coat, you say. He sewed it into my quilt, or my mother did. Rain takes it gently, turns it in his palm. He signed his name E.M.T. Elijah Morning Tully, Morning, because he was born with a son. You smile faintly. So was I. He looks up. You're his daughter. You nod, slow, certain. And that land, Everett's Ranch, it's yours, by blood, by law, if there's any justice left. You laugh, soft and bitter. Is there? Rain shrugs. Not out here. Then he reaches into his satchel again, pulls out a wrapped bundle, inside another quilt, older, faded, but the same pattern. He made one for me, Rain says. Said one day we'd find each other, said blood knows its own. You touch the stitches, familiar, painfully so. I thought I was alone, you whisper. You were. He lifts your chin, but you're not now. The silence between you settles like snow, gentle but heavy, and for the first time you let it stay. That night, Rain builds a fire in a hollow beneath the pines. The wind whistles through the trees and the smoke spirals straight up like it's being called. You sit cross-legged with both quilts spread between you. His worn and sun-faded, yours scorched and stitched anew, mirror images with different wounds. He speaks softly, like a man who's told this only once, to himself. Elijah met your mother during a cattle drive. He was a wrangler trying to earn money to claim land. Said she laughed at his boots. You smile. She always said, a man's soul starts at his heels. Rain nods. He wrote to me that she made him believe in peace, that maybe if a child came of it, he'd build something better. Your throat tightens. She never said why he left. He was drafted, thought it would be quick, thought he could come back clean. Rain reaches into his coat, pulls out a folded paper cracked at the seams. This is the last letter he sent me. I found it only after my mother died. He hands it to you. You read, if she bears a daughter, tell her the quilt was never just for warmth. It is proof. She is not a mistake. She is the reason I tried to be more than a survivor. Your hand trembles. Rain watches you gently. He tried to come back, but someone, stopped him. You don't ask who, because in your gut you already know. Everett's father, the man who took Elijah's land, forged deeds, erased stories. You trace a finger along the edge of your quilt. There were others, you whisper. Lyda said, she wasn't the first girl brought there. Rain nods once. That place is a wound, yours to name. You stare at the fire. The quilt between you flutters with the breeze, two halves of the same truth. You never thought of it before, but now you see it. The pattern's not random. Each block tells the story of a life, a farm, a fire, a birth, a betrayal. He pulls a small piece of red thread from his satchel, places it in your hand. Add 1 square, he says. Not for him, for you. You stitch as the fire crackles. The square is brown wool from your shawl. Inside, in careful red letters, she claimed what was never given and gave what was never claimed. Rain leans back on his elbow, staring up at the stars. And for a long while, neither of you speak, because the wind says enough. And so do the stitches. You return at dusk, not because it's safe, but because it's time. Rain stays hidden along the tree line, his horse tethered to a pine. He's not here to fight. He's here to bear witness. You walk alone up the dirt path toward the house you were sold to. The boards creak like bones beneath your boots. The well bucket is gone. So is Lida. But the barn's still standing. The porch still sags. And Everett's voice still carries through the door like a threat. You came back? You nod once. Calm. I want what's mine. He laughs. Short. Ugly. You've got nothing. I've got a name? You say. He steps forward, shotgun in hand again. Name doesn't mean deed. No, you agree. But buried proof does. That stops him. You pull a folded cloth from your pocket. Not the quilt, the square you removed last night. The one with the muslin lining. And the initials burned in with a hot needle. EMT, Elijah Morning Tully. Inside the lining is a slip of paper you found in the barn cellar. An inventory. 4 girls, you say. 4 quilts. All brought here. All traded for parcels of land now in your name. He snatches the paper, but it's too late. Rain steps out from the trees, calm and still. I sent copies to the judge in Cedar Bluff, Wasas, he says, and to the bureau in Wichita. Everett stares. You're bluffing. You smile. Try me. Behind you, Lida steps from the stable, her arms full of fabric. She walks past Everett, drops the bundle at his feet. 4 quilts, each with initials stitched along the border. Each girl, silent until now, has a square in that house. Your house is a ledger, you whisper, a monument to theft. Everett lifts the shotgun, but it's not you who stops him. It's Lida. You raise that again, she says, and we all hang your story on the church doors. For the first time he hesitates. Then he runs. Coward, not killer. Rain doesn't follow, neither do you. Because now, you don't need vengeance. You have the truth. You turn, walk into the house, not as his wife, not as his property, as his reckoning. And the first thing you do? Tack your father's name to the door, not to mark your claim, but to remind the land who it once belonged to. You don't sleep, not that night, not in that house. The walls remember too much. Lida helps you pack before dawn. Nothing loud, nothing sharp. Just quiet footsteps and a saddlebag of essentials. The stitched quilt, the button, the muslin square. She gives you her own scarf, worn, lavender-scented. For luck, she says, voice steady. I'm not coming back, you whisper. I know. Rain waits with the horses. You climb on behind him just as the sky begins to gray. The plateau stretches wide in every direction. Dust, sagebrush, ridge lines bathed in early light. The wind is sharp with a bite of coming winter. You don't look back at the house, but you feel it, like a final exhale. Rain doesn't speak for miles, But then, as the river comes into view, he says softly, "You did more than claim land." You glance at him. You rewrote a name. The river ahead is wide, its current fast. There's no bridge, only a crossing point where the rocks rise above the water like teeth. You dismount. He does too. Together you carry the quilts across, pressed to your chests like relics. At the far bank you pause. Let the water drip from the hems. You bury your boots into the earth. "This is it," you say. "Where he crossed once," Rain nods. "And where you finish it." You kneel, open your bag, pull out the last square. Wool, red thread, brown background. One last stitch. You sew it right into the center of the quilt, not on the edge where names hide, but right where the heart rests. It reads, "She was not traded. She was kept alive by thread and by the ones who remembered." Rain watches, hands folded, reverent. When you rise, the wind catches the quilt. It flutters like a flag. You turn to him. "There are other girls," you say. "I know." And other lies, sewn into the seams. He lifts his hand. "We'll unstitch them all." And you ride again, not as fugitives, not as survivors, but as the first of many whose stories were never burned all the way through. They say justice rides slow in the frontier, but sometimes it gallops. You reach Clearwater by dusk. Rain rides ahead, his braid lifted by the wind. Behind you the saddle creaks under the weight of two quilts, one scorched, one sacred. The town looks smaller than you remember, or maybe you've grown. Word spreads fast when a Lakota rider enters the main street beside a white girl holding a quilt like a war drum. Sheriff Marston meets you on the boardwalk. His hand twitches near his holster, not from threat but uncertainty. You speak first. "We need the records for Parcel 17, South Ridge, claimed by Everett Gable, under the name of Tully Elijah." He hesitates, looks between you and Rain. Rain doesn't flinch. "You have two choices," he says. "Help us, or help history forget." The sheriff's lips press tight. Then he nods. Inside the town hall, the ledgers are old and thick with dust, but the page turns easily. You see it, in ink, in betrayal. Elijah M. Tully, claimed July 1863, disappeared, land reassigned. Beside it, an addendum. "No known heirs." Your breath catches. You point. "I am the heir." He looks at you, at the quilt in your hands, at the name in blood-colored thread. Outside a voice growls, "You don't get to take what ain't yours." Everett, gun drawn, face twisted, boots scraping the floor. You think the town'll listen to a bastard girl and a savage. The room stills. No one moves. No one needs to. Because Rain steps forward, no weapon drawn, just one item in hand, the button. He holds it high. "This was his," he says. "Proof, blood and brass. She carries both." You speak next, voice low but strong. "My name is Maribel Morning Hayes, daughter of Elijah Tully. He didn't vanish, he was erased." Everett's hand shakes. "Your father owed me. My father loved her," you interrupt. "And that's what scared you." You step forward, calm, certain. You don't get to speak his name again. Everett lunges, but it's the sheriff who grabs him, wrenches the gun from his grip, slams him to the floor. "Been waiting to see you fall," he mutters. "Guess the land never liked thieves." It ends in silence. No trial, no gallows, just the sound of ink scratching a new name into the deed book, yours. Rain watches, arms crossed, quiet. "You wrote yourself back into the story," he says. "No," you say softly, fingers on the quilt. "I stitched my way here." They give you the deed at noon, pressed into your palm like a second heartbeat. Lida comes to Clearwater on foot, dirty skirt, defiant eyes, the lavender scarf tied firm around her throat. She stands behind you in the clerk's office, arms crossed. "You going to rename it?" she asks. You don't answer right away. Instead, you walk the deed back to the place where it all began, the ranch. You ride there alone, no fanfare, no riders, just you and the wind and a saddle worn from too many stories. The house is quiet, empty now. Doors open like arms that once slapped. Inside, dust has begun its slow reclamation. Spiders in the rafters, ash in the hearth. You carry the quilt into the main room, lay it over the table like an offering. Then you take out the final item. A letter you never read, the one from the barn tin, its edges burned but legible still. You unfold it. If she grows, if she breathes, tell her she was never born in shame. She was stitched in hope, in firelight, in the breath between her mother's laughter and my first name. She is the land, and she will never be sold. Below it, no signature, just a fingerprint. You set the letter on the hearth, let it catch flame. You watch it burn, not out of spite, but so no one can steal it again. Outside, you take the new deed and tack it above the door, the ink still wet with truth. M. Hayes, proprietor. But above that, you stitch a square onto the lintel, a red square, with one name sewn into its heart, Elijah. Because fire can take almost everything, but not that, not anymore. That night, you sleep on the porch floor, no cot, no roof, just stars above and quilt below. You don't need a bed to rest. Rain arrives near midnight, says nothing at first, just kneels beside you, lays his own quilt beside yours. 2 stories, 2 bloodlines, 1 firelight. Lida sits by the door peeling apples like she's been part of this land all her life. Maybe she has. Maybe this place needed her just as much. The wind hushes the fields, and for the first time, you speak your mother's name aloud. No fear, no whisper. You speak it like a bell rung after battle. The quilts flap gently in the night breeze. You stitch one last line into the border. Not a name, not a date. Just a truth. She was never forgotten, only waiting to be found. Rain lies back beside the fire. Lida hums a hymn. And you? You close your eyes. The threads of your past no longer strangle. They wrap you like arms and carry you home.